Hello and welcome to Daytime, your place for scary stories, straight from the horror forums of Reddit. Make sure to like and subscribe for more horror tales of things that go bump in the night. On tonight's episode, a man having trouble in his relationship tries a new couple's therapy treatment that alters his life forever. So if you could switch bodies with someone, who would you be? Because you can be anyone with step minding.
A couple of years ago, I was dating a woman named Lynn. She was deeply enthusiastic about alternative medicine. It was such a strange obsession. In every other aspect, she was insightful and critical. Hell, she was a paralegal. She just had this one blind spot that I could never figure out. It was a big part of her life. We were together for 2 years. During that time, she had me try all kinds of strange treatments and experiences. Things like acupuncture, spirit healing, crystals, Reiki, Rolfing, and even a seance. I may or may not have been asked to do ayahuasca. I went along with it because I cared deeply for her, but the cracks in our relationship had started to show. It turned out we wouldn't last in the long run. But I don't want to talk about that relationship. I want to talk about this one treatment she took me to, and how it has shaped the life I'm living today. It's a bit complicated. I'm going to talk about step minding. It was an early Minnesota morning and the last session that Lynn and I would attend as a couple. We pulled into a nondescript parking lot and Lynn led me by the hand. We'd had an insane fight that morning about something I can barely remember. I think it was the order you put in your yogurt when eating muesli. Of course you put the muesli in first, right? It's like cereal. We entered a stale waiting room. The AC must have been off for days. I could taste the air. The only other person there was a short, balding man who spoke to us in a vaguely European accent, barely looking up from his iPad.
Stevenson's?
He asked.
Overexposure is room 4.
No, that's not us, I said. We're...
Right. Sorry.
He sighed.
Wrong day.
He tapped the screen a couple of times and nodded.
Step minding, couples treatment, still room 4.
Thank you. He wandered off and I noticed he didn't have any shoes on. I pointed it out to Lynn, who elbowed me. She thought I was being judgmental. I just thought it was strange. I didn't want to start anything. She vehemently disagreed with my assessment, as always. We walked up to room 4. The door was already open. It was a plain windowless room with a small coffee table, surrounded by 4 basic office chairs. There was a vase with a single blue sunflower. There was a naked light bulb overhead with nothing covering it. The floor was covered in a plain gray carpet. There was a little note on the door that urged us to take off our shoes. Lynn just smiled at me as if this explained everything. I rolled my eyes. We sat down across from one another and waited. It didn't take that long before a woman wandered in. She was in her 40s, wearing a sort of knitted white wool caftan. She had a combed back flat Elvira-looking hairdo and covered herself in rings, chains, and bangles. She shook our hands, smiling widely.
I'm Dr. Bogan,
She assured us.
but please call me Jane.
I wasn't feeling all too confident about what we were about to do. Jane described the procedure. Step minding was a way to connect one another in a new way, giving a better understanding of what it's like to walk a mile in their shoes. There were a couple of rules to remember before we started. For example, once the treatment started, we couldn't get up from our chairs. If we did, we'd get horribly nauseous. Also, we had a sort of safety noise. If someone were to snap their fingers 3 times in a sequence, that'd trigger a failsafe that brought us right back. All in all, it seemed odd, but not like nefarious. Then we began. Jane rhythmically snapped her fingers, like someone tapping their feet to a slow song. She spoke in a monotone voice, asking us to look down.
Look at your feet.
She said,
Imagine the feeling of walking, the way your muscles contract and your knee bends. Think of how it makes you feel, and imagine the sound you think your body makes.
I don't remember the exact wording of what she told us next, but I remember how it made me feel. Without moving, we were supposed to imagine standing up, stepping across and through the coffee table, and sitting down in the chair of the person on the other side. Our spirit passing through them, occupying the same space. We were to imagine looking at ourselves through the eyes of the other. There was a breathing exercise, following the rhythm of her fingers snapping. We joined our breaths, and Jane made us focus on each part of our body, leading from our toes up to the top of our heads. She called it materializing. We kept our eyes on our feet, except slowly, they weren't my feet anymore.
Now look.
Jane said,
Look at yourself.
I was looking down at Lynn's feet, but not through my eyes. I have a hard time describing the first sensation of step-minding. Jane's finger snapping stopped, and all of a sudden I was looking up at, well, myself. I was sitting in Lynn's chair. I was, for all intents and purposes, experiencing the world as Lynn. I was Lynn. My hands were smaller, more delicate. I was colder, and my clothes were uncomfortable. Smell and taste felt different, and I had this gnawing hunger in the back of my stomach. My back ached, and I could feel my long hair reaching halfway down my back. I wasn't just looking at Lynn's feet, I was Lynn. I can barely remember what I did. We talked and touched each other's hands, reassuring one another that we were actually experiencing this. Lynn was repeating the same thing over and over.
That's me,
She said.
I'm looking at me. You're me. I'm you.
We had a long discussion. I could feel air reverberating through my throat in a strange way. I had to settle myself in her body, and there were so many details that just didn't click. It was so hard to focus on what was being said when all I could think about was the way my earrings swung back and forth when I moved my head. But after about an hour, Jane snapped her fingers 3 times, and I was back in my chair in the blink of an eye. This is how I realized I was short-sighted. Lynn's vision had been perfect. I also felt bigger, heavier. Her world felt so different from mine. And while it didn't explain our disagreements, it gave me some insights into just how different we really were. I made a note to get new glasses. Still reeling from the experience, Lynn and I thanked Dr. Bogan and stepped out. We had a strange, disoriented talk in the parking lot and broke up. It was oddly amicable, as if we both understood that we were fundamentally incompatible. That was it. No drama, just that's it. I thought about that day for weeks. It was so surreal. I mean, how do you go from a literal out-of-body experience and back to work on Monday morning? You can't pretend that nothing happened. I wanted to understand it. Like, really understand it. I'd been to countless nonsensical treatments with Lynn, but this one had been the real deal. There was no denying it, even though I desperately tried to. A couple of weeks later, I returned to Dr. Bogan on my own. I wanted to talk to her about it. The science behind it, how it functioned, how it was performed, anything. And of course, how had I never heard of step-minding before? I met her on a rainy Wednesday afternoon. She sat me down and had her assistant offer me a cup of coffee. She explained it as calmly as she could. It was complicated, but essentially, she explained it as something based on Raskian identity theory. The transfer of thought pattern through vocal mediation, exchanging vibrations and adapting electrical patterns in the brain. Every word sounded like nonsensical pseudoscience, but it didn't change the fact of what I'd experienced. And at the end of the day, that was the only thing that really mattered. I have to see it again, I said. I need to understand this.
Funny you should say that.
She smiled.
I think we can work something out.
Jane offered me a quid pro quo. She had a couple of patients who could benefit from a step-minding session, but she needed a neutral third party to act as the recipient. I seemed to be a good fit. I was skeptical, but she had a little bonus to sweeten the deal. She'd pay me a handsome sum of cash for each session as a kind of consultation fee. I was a bit hesitant, but I agreed. 1 week later, I sat in on a session with Jane and one of her patients. The patient had a dissociative issue and needed a step-minding session to alleviate a strange obsession she seemed to have with what sounded like a houseplant. I didn't pay too much attention. I was nervous. I couldn't figure out why. Maybe it was the thought that what I'd experienced was real, and how that would force me to change the way I viewed the world. If a thing like step-minding exists, who's to say there aren't ghosts or wizards? So I sat down with this stranger, and Jane started snapping her fingers.
Now look.
She began.
Look at yourself.
Jane used the same words, the same sequence, the same rhythm. stepping out of my body and into another. But the difference was palpable this time. Lynn had been calm and collected, but this woman was the opposite. Sitting in her body, my pulse was higher. My legs were shaking and my breathing was shallow. I was physically exhausted, but mentally wired. Thoughts rushing 100 different ways at once, and I didn't even know why. A single second in that body, looking across my table back at myself, and I could tell they were a troubled person. I was to sit there for a while as Jane had a discussion with the other patient. Instinctively, I stood up to leave the room to give them privacy, but I had to sit back down. My head started spinning as all these unfamiliar muscles reacted to my input, and I couldn't get very far. Perhaps the sitting down rule was there for a good reason. I sat there, trying to calm down, while the two of them had a discussion. I was asked to put on headphones for a bit, and I didn't mind. It was hard hearing anything through my pounding pulse anyway. As the session came to an end, Jane snapped her fingers, and I was back in my chair. My heart rate was slower. I wasn't shaking, I was nervous. But compared to the other patient, I was an obelisk of relaxation. For a moment, looking across the table, I could see her taking a deep breath. She was still shaking, but not as much as when we started. Perhaps that session gave her a new perspective on things. As the patient left, I got a moment to talk to Jane alone. I explained to her that if we had wheelchairs instead, the other patient could be rolled out during the session. That'd be more effective than using headphones. She really liked that idea, and suggested we'd try it at the next session, which, inadvertently, answered my next question. There was going to be more sessions. I worked on and off with Dr. Bogan for a couple of months. I usually did about 3 to 5 sessions per month, netting me a bonus income of about $400 per session. Jane ended up getting 2 wheelchairs and having her assistant, Jonathan, wheel me out while she had a conversation with the other patient. I grew accustomed to it and started to enjoy the sensation. It's sort of a pleasant ego death. You feel more connected to the world. It was becoming a steady source of secondary income. Taking an afternoon off work to get paid for something that I ultimately enjoyed? Yeah, not a bad deal. Over the upcoming weeks, I got a couple more opportunities. I joined Jane on a couple of out-of-town sessions, meeting some clients she was following up on. Mostly folks who need privacy for one reason or another. Folks with all kinds of strange afflictions. I could probably write a book about those people alone. Coming back home, Jane contacted me about doing a couple of sessions where she wasn't personally involved. I was also asked to be the guide a couple of times, seeing as how I'd step-minded so many times and could recite the guiding words by heart. The pay was more than doubled, so I agreed. I had 3 guiding sessions on my own. One with a hippie couple who wanted to experience a sort of intimacy. Let's just leave it at that. Another session with 2 brothers performing a trust exercise. The third one was a group of college kids who wanted to debunk the whole thing. They left sort of befuddled. All in all, things were going well. Then I got a call about being a neutral third party. I was going to perform a switch with a patient, but this time Jane wasn't involved at all. The customer went straight to me. It was a group of people who contacted me. They described it as their dad having a disorder, and that they wanted to try step-minding to sort of reset him. They'd arranged their own guide, so they just needed me as a neutral third party, someone who wouldn't freak out about the process, as it might take a couple of hours to get through to him. It would be my longest session yet, but the pay was good, and I'd tried a lot of things up until that point. I was ready. I met the client, Harold, at his home in southern St. Cloud. Big place, 3 floors. Gated property with both a pool and a tennis court. Modern architecture and heated floor tiles. The guide for the evening was a cheery woman in her 40s. She gave off a bit of a college professor kind of vibe. Apart from the client himself, there was a group of 4 other people who seemed to be close relatives. And of course, there was Harold himself, the man I was supposed to work with. Harold was surprisingly upbeat. I couldn't see anything obviously wrong with him, which surprised me. From what I understood, he was in dire need of this treatment. He was a man in his early 60s, but could easily pass for 50. Hell, the man had better teeth than me. I could tell he must have been a salesman at some point. You can tell by the smile. I was introduced to the others, who introduced themselves as friends and family. We hurried into the living room, where a space had been prepared. We were all seated as a group. The guide had prepared everything and offered me a reassuring smile. She took our hands, something that Jane usually didn't do.
I just want to make sure we're all feeling good about this.
She said.
We good?
We good, I nodded.
We're good.
Harold agreed, and with that, the session was on. The guide snapped her fingers, lowered her voice, and took us down the mental road and across the table. By then, I knew the process. The right words, with the right cadence, at the right time. I sunk back in my chair, looking at my feet, and felt the world shift. After a while, my shoes looked different. They were nicer, and my pants fit me better. Slowly, I started to feel the reality of my borrowed body. The various aches and pains, the thinning hair, the wrinkles on my cheek when I blinked. I'd aged about 30 years in a couple minutes, and it would take some time adjusting. Looking up and seeing myself in the opposite chair, I got this anxious sting in my chest. The thought crossed my mind. What if I never returned? The guide excused herself and left. She'd done her job. The rest was up to Harold and his associates. But as soon as I heard the front door close, the air in the room shifted. Harold was sitting there, looking like me, stretching his arms. The others joined us, making a circle. One of Harold's associates, a young woman who'd introduced herself as Hope, spoke to the both of us. She could easily have been his daughter.
How you feeling?
She asked.
Everyone okay?
Yeah, I nodded. You do what you gotta do.
So this works?
Harold asked.
This is it? It's done?
It's done.
Hope smiled. Harold pulled out a gun, a well-polished revolver. I was the only one who reacted, flinching at the sight of it. The others didn't seem to care. I didn't know what to do. Should I be scared? If so, why was no one reacting?
So we just cut the cord then,
He said.
and we're good to go.
Wait, what are you... They were tricking me. They put me in that old body, and had no intention of putting me back. I held up my hand and snapped my finger 2 times. But before the third snap, I had a gun pushed against the back of my head.
That won't help.
Hope said.
We'll just kill you when you're... you. Again.
It's hard to describe what I felt in that moment. The fear was real, but there was also a longing to go back. Being out of your own body is like sleeping outside. You feel exposed and maladjusted. If you know it's just for a while, it's not that bad. But if there's a chance you can't go back, it becomes terrifying. Like getting lost in the woods. That's not even counting for the primal terror you feel from having a gun pointed at you. Harold seemed a bit confused, which made me realize that no one had explained the rules to him. That we couldn't get up, and that 3 snaps of a finger would cancel the effect. I got the impression that he thought this was somehow permanent. Looking at him, I could see a worry spread across his face. My face.
You said this was permanent.
He said, looking at Hope.
It is, as long as you don't do 3 finger snaps.
How's that gonna work when we cut him off?
You're gonna have to make sure you're never around someone who snaps their fingers, Harold.
She smiled.
That's not too much, is it?
Do I have to remind you that I got the tapes to put you away?
Harold snarled back.
And that if anything were to happen to me, you're done?
Nothing's gonna happen, Harold.
Hope chuckled.
Look, you're right there, safe and sound.
She pointed at me. It was as if a light turned on in Harold's eyes. He was being double-crossed, just like me. In a desperate moment, he raised his handgun at me. I recoiled so hard that I fell out of my chair, feeling my heart skip a beat. Cold sweat spread across my arms, clinging to the thin inner fabric of Harold's expensive blazer. But there was no gunshot, just a click. His gun was empty. That click was the loudest sound I'd ever heard. I came crumbling down to the floor, feeling the effects of the first rule. Don't get up. I was immediately nauseous. I felt like a bobblehead as my head went one way and my body another. I collapsed in a pile, trying to find the magic number of blinks to make the world stop spinning.
You'll never get past the safety checks.
Harold screamed.
You'll never get the backups. You dash.
It's all fingerprinted.
Hope sighed.
Fingerprinted, biocoded, voice checked. Sorry,
A man raised his arm. There was no second click. Instead, there was a bang. I looked up with my ears ringing, watching a reflection of my dead self on the other side of the coffee table. Bullet to the brain. Nothing but blank eyes looking back at me. My face didn't look dead. It just looked sort of tired, like I was sleepy. I was expecting that face to blink, but that blink never came. Blood pooled at the corner of the mouth, running down from the open wound at the temple. They pulled me up and dragged me over to Harold's workstation. They used my hand to log in. I had to do a voice recognition check as Hope's associates went through 2 laptops and a smartphone. While they did, Hope sat down across from me. My head was still swimming.
We're gonna need you.
She said.
And as long as you play along, you will be fine. But if you fuck with me...
She snapped her fingers twice. Ice filled my veins as I gripped my seat.
I can't imagine something good would happen if we tried this.
She said, lowering her voice.
So, how about we just really, really pay attention,
She explained it to me. I was done for. Anyone in her crew could snap their fingers 3 times, and I'd be done. This also meant I couldn't perform step minding again, as you need a rhythmic finger snapping as part of the process. She explained the plan. They needed Harold alive to slowly transfer his company shares to someone else, without it looking all too suspicious. They needed access to his files, both immediate and over a longer time. They explained that they needed me around to make it appear that everything was fine. In return, I'd get to live in this amazing place, with whatever comforts I could ask for the rest of my days. But if I slipped up, snap, 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 done. Fade to black. It was so surreal, watching them wrap up my own body in black plastic. Men in tailored blazers scrubbing the floors and walls with bleach. Hope sitting across from me, rubbing her fingers together.
Where do you think you'll go?
She asked.
If I snap my fingers, where do you think you'll go?
I don't know, I stuttered. I don't.
Maybe you'll be fine.
She shrugged.
Maybe there's something nice and warm on the other side. Or maybe the snapping doesn't even work anymore. Wanna try?
No.
No?
She smiled.
No, you don't. You're smarter than that. And maybe you're not the gambling type.
She tapped the barrel of the gun on Harold's mahogany desk.
You can have all the parties you want. You got a big bank account.
She sighed.
But maybe be careful about inviting musical people. Those who stomp their feet or snap their fingers.
And that was that. I was left there. I had keys to a place I didn't know. A phone full of numbers I didn't recognize. I just stood there in the chlorine-smelling house of a stranger. I didn't know what to feel. Ever since I first started step minding, I had never considered this. It was unreal. I remember looking down at my own hand, not being sure if I could snap myself out of it. What would happen? Over time, I got used to the nausea. Nowadays, it's gone. I can walk around like anyone else, but I have to avoid crowds. I can't risk hearing those 3 snaps. I watch videos with the sound off and subtitles on. I only watch movies after checking the soundtrack, making sure there's no snapping in the songs. Radio's out of the question. You never know where you might hear it. And even if you do, does it work hearing it through a TV or in a song? Would you risk it? I won't. I can't. I don't think I can ever adjust. I've thought about contacting people from my old life, but I wouldn't know where to begin. How do you explain this? I have to be careful not to draw any attention to myself, or Hope and her cronies might return. And if they do, well, I don't know how far I can push my luck. I mean, I'm comfortable. Harold made close to 6 figures a month on passive income. I've learned most things about his life. He never married, he has no children, and most of his contacts are passing acquaintances at best. He was a lonely man, and now that's me. I've changed a couple of names in the story as to not make it too obvious who I am. Then again, even if I said it outright, I can't imagine it would matter. No one's going to believe this. How do you convince someone that you're really someone else? It just sounds schizophrenic. I spend most of my days considering my options. I've thought about destroying my hearing as a safety measure. Yes, going deaf is awful, But you have no idea what it's like living with the thought that a sound that can be done at any time, by anyone, can kill you. It's exhausting, and you end up isolating yourself. So I'm typing this out on a fancy laptop, on a mahogany desk. I'm Harold now, screaming into the void that I used to be someone else. I'm sipping on a drink from a glass with my initials on it. And when I go to bed tonight, I will do the same thing I do every night. I will take a long look at myself. I got better vision now. Harold isn't short-sighted, but I can't look at myself. I'm not there anymore. It's just Harold.
Hello and welcome to Daytime, your place for scary stories straight from the horror forums of Reddit. Make sure to like and subscribe for more horror tales of things that go bumping the night. On tonight's episode, a man facing hard times goes to a party to relieve some stress when he meets a maniac. So, are you aware of stranger danger? Because no matter what you do, don't talk to Stranger Tom.
When Sammy got sick, it was like stepping into a dark mirror world. We'd been economically well off with our 2 full-time jobs and a child-free lifestyle. So to suddenly step down to a single income was a wake-up call. Not to mention how the insurance companies managed to weasel out of paying for more than half of Sammy's treatment. Disgusting. Sammy swung for the fences. She took it all in stride. We had our ups and downs with every doctor's visit, but we always ended taking steps back rather than forward. There was always next time, they said, but we figured we were quickly running out of next times. 1 year down the line, Sammy was on a downward spiral. By then, the catastrophic had turned tragically mundane. I did everything I could to keep her spirit up, but at that point, her light was faded. We barely spoke anymore. A work friend of mine, Barry, was having a bachelor party. He was pulling out all the stops. I was never planning on going, but Sammy insisted I should.
You need to get out of the house for a bit.
She smiled.
Do something normal for a while.
I protested, but seeing her light up for the first time in weeks was enough to break my guard. She was so happy to see I still had friends out there. How could I say no? I agreed to be the designated driver. I wouldn't be gone for more than a day, and I'd just be a phone call away. Sammy didn't seem to need that kind of reassurance. It was mostly for me. This was in November. Barry was having a December wedding and wanted all his pals to come along for one big night. Sure, I was just a work friend, but when you're in your mid-30s, you gotta take what you get, friends-wise. And Barry certainly took what he could, inviting no less than 25 people. So in mid-November, I packed my bags and stepped on board a party bus heading for Annapolis. There were drinks and dinner at the hotel, then a few hours of losing money on the craps table. I gambled away about $200 at the roulette table, but magically won about $600 playing blackjack. After months of losing battle after battle, it felt good to finally win. I gotta admit, I was getting into it. Not as much as Barry's best man, Jake, the guy wearing goggles who spelled out boobs. But hey, that's hard to top. What a legend. Once it became apparent that there'd be no need for a designated driver, I just went along with it. 5 shots of mint schnapps later, and I started feeling a bit guilty. I called Sammy, but she laughed it off.
It's good to hear you slur.
She said,
You're a fun drunk.
Most of the night went by in a blur. More drinks, some dancing, lots of cheering for our main man Barry. Flashing lights, people pulling us back and forth between dance floors, bars, and wandering the streets looking for a taco truck. I clearly remember sitting on a park bench at one point, listening to one of Barry's friends lecture me about roasted seed snacks. Something about antioxidants and digestion. I only remember the noise of it. I ended up back at the hotel. Jake had rented Barry this huge room, and 12 of us had made it all the way there, the after party. And the night was far from over, because of course there had to be exotic dancers. I crossed the line by getting completely bass-ackwards drunk, but that's about as far as I was willing to go. I gently but firmly declined to partake in any dancing. Instead, I retreated to the back of the room and enjoyed a cigar. Not a habit I'm very proud of, but it's one of those things my old man taught me to appreciate. A good cigar, a whiskey on the rocks. Hell, a man might forget his troubles for a while. Sometime after them replaying Pour Some Sugar on Me for the 6th time, the party was dying down. Some people were heading back to their rooms. Some did so with the company of a dancer. It was a wild night. But like most parties, the music dies. And at 3 in the morning, I was ready to let it. There were only 4 of us left by then. Barry, Jake, some guy named Ramsey, and I. We'd all crashed on a couch, telling stories about our wives, or in Barry's case, his wife-to-be. It was a wild party, but it was clear the guy was in love. Gotta respect that. Then a stranger walked in, at least 6'7", body like a scarecrow. Wore all black, except for a white shirt, white hair slicked back and combed. He had the most intense blue eyes I'd ever seen, like he could look straight through me if he wanted.
I see you gentlemen are enjoying yourselves.
He smiled.
I'm guessing the girls didn't disappoint.
They most assuredly did not.
Hiccuped Jake.
But we're married men here.
Oh, I can tell. If it wasn't for the cigars, all I'd smell in here is virtue.
That got a chuckle out of us. Jake introduced him as Tom, or Stranger Tom. Apparently, he was the kind of guy you'd talk to if you wanted to have a good time, anywhere from Pasadena to Kent Island. He co-ran several clubs, and he was an enthusiastic movie entrepreneur. I only had to see the color of his business cards to know exactly what kind of movies he made. Classy stuff. As we started winding down, our discussion drifted into a more philosophical nature. Barry kept saying how much he hoped this marriage would be the one. Jake was worrying about his youngest kid not making it through college. Ramsey was on the verge of crying, talking about his sick dog. And me? Well, I didn't want to say anything. I didn't want to think about real life for a while. Stranger Tom took his feet off the coffee table, spilling an ashtray on the floor. He brought out this intricate silver lighter, engraved with a crow and a pair of sunflowers.
Let's imagine, if you would, that you could get answers to all those questions, he said. If you could know what things would look like with your wife 20 years down the line. If you could get a hint how to push your boy to the finish line, or how you could find just the right person to help your darling pooch make it just a little longer.
Yeah?
Grinned Barry, finishing the last drops of his drink.
That'd be worth something, wouldn't it?
Sure would,
Nodded Jake.
Well, how about it then?
Tom flicked open his lighter, and the steady blue flame shot out. Small, but bright as hell. It didn't flicker.
It'll cost you, but you'll get what you want. Price varies on the scope of the question.
Is this like a party trick? Like a Luigi board?
Chuckled Jake. The guys laughed. I couldn't hold back a snort myself.
Ouija board.
Ramsey corrected.
Luigi is the, Mario guy.
Whatever. Tom, is it like that?
Nah,
Stranger Tom smiled.
I assure you, it ain't nothing like that.
He turned his attention to me, eyeing me up and down. There was this strange smile on his face, and the man never seemed to blink. Even then, as drunk as I was, I could tell he was creepy as shit. I'm good, I smiled. You guys go ahead.
Surely you want to know something. Something good.
I looked down at my empty glass. Tom was getting on my nerves. Playing on the worries of drunk people is one of the lowest ways to trick someone out of a cheap buck. Reminded me of a televangelist, but without the promise of paradise. Sure, I nodded. I'm calling you out, Tom. I want you to tell me the color of my lucky boxers. The ones I wore at my wedding.
That's it?
That's it,
Fair enough.
said Tom.
Now take a good hard look and just tell me one thing.
We all focused on the silver lighter with the little blue flame. Unflickering, steady, like an oil painting.
Do you submit?
He asked. We did. It all happened in an instant. This one loud snap, like a choir of carrots breaking in unison. Jake's right arm, fragmented in 3 places. I could see bone poking out in different directions, breaking through the skin. Ramsey's jaw snapped and 3 teeth rolled out of his mouth, tapping against the side of the table as they tumbled across the floor. Barry's left leg seemingly exploded, cracking wide open from ankle to hip. And me? A sting on my index finger, nothing more. For a second, there were no screams. Just these blank stares as we were drawn into the blue light. There was no panic, no agony, just realization.
Yes,
Said Jake in perfect clarity.
yes, that's how.
She's still beautiful.
Muttered Barry. Ramsey tried to talk, but ended up slurring with his broken jaw. Blood-mixed spit poured out of the corner of his mouth, along with 2 more teeth. I sat there looking at these 3 broken men as Stranger Tom lit a cigarette. It was like 3 puppets who'd had their strings cut, talking out loud like wind-up dolls. Tom held the lighter aloft, keeping the blue flame bright and steady. He looked me dead in the eye, his smile growing wider.
They were red,
He said.
with little white petals.
He closed the lighter, and our collective consciousness went out, along with the blue flame. Waking from a dreamless sleep, I remember screaming. It stank of blood, and I could see dark brown spots across the floor and furniture. There were 2 EMTs giving Barry chest compressions, and someone lifting Jake out of his chair. Ramsey was nowhere to be seen. It was bright outside. Someone was trying to get me out of my chair.
Make room.
They yelled.
Get out.
Is he dead? Oh my God, is he dead? I leaned against an unknown hotel staffer as she helped me out of the room. The second I was out, the hangover and chalk buckled me over. I hurled all over the carpet. The hallways were covered in confused guests as a flurry of people rushed past me. I only caught a glimpse of Barry's arm. It was white as snow. I had nothing but a bruise on my index finger. It was chaos. EMTs running back and forth, screams in the hallway, in the rooms. Someone just kept yelling, "What's wrong with Barry?" over and over again. My heart was beating so fast that I could barely hear it. Stranger Tom had been absolutely right. My lucky boxers were red with white petals. I got them for my wedding day. They always managed to bring Sammy a smile. They were just this bright reminder of happier days. So of course they were lucky, but I couldn't stop staring at my index finger. I'd asked a small question and paid a small price. Was it that simple? Was it real? Really real? Barry's fiancée promised to inform us as soon as she heard something about his condition. One of the other guests offered me a ride home. One by one, we left the town in silence. All the while, I couldn't stop thinking about that tall man with the silver lighter. By the time I got home, Sammy had already heard the news. She hobbled all the way to the front door, almost dropping her cane as she flung herself at me. I wrapped my arms around her, feeling a tinge of ache in my finger.
Thank God you're okay.
She sobbed.
They said it was an accident.
I didn't want to worry her. She had so much on her mind as it was. I don't know, honey, I lied, kissing her head. I was out cold. The next few weeks, I got a lot of updates. Barry had started to recover. Jake was so messed up they had to amputate parts of his lower arm, along with 2 fingers. Ramsey had to drink his dinner for the foreseeable future, but he was doing better. I tried to put it all out of my head. I had more immediate things to deal with, even if that blue flame haunted my nightmares. I sometimes imagined Stranger Tom sitting at the edge of my bed, asking me if there was anything I liked to know. And of course there was, but this was badness. There's no such thing as wandering prophets and soothsayers. But when I saw an Instagram post of Ramsey hugging his dog, something ached in my heart. Maybe it was all real. Maybe I'd missed a real, actual opportunity. In early December, Sammy took a turn for the worse. Her parents were over every day to help out while I was at work, trying their best to get her to her various appointments. The doctors had all but given up, but were determined to finish the treatment nonetheless. Then came that one day. I'd forgotten about doing laundry and only had a single pair of underwear left. My lucky boxers, red with white petals. Putting them on even then brought a smile to Sammy's face. I decided that I wouldn't let the mundane win. I wouldn't wait for the worst to happen. I took time off work and went to see Jake. Jake was still on sick leave for his broken arm. I met him at a cafe downtown. We got ourselves a couple of bear claws. Without the boobs glasses, he almost looked like a person. We small talked about Barry and Ramsey and how they were doing better. Jake talked about his arm, how the 2 of us had lived through the wildest nights of our lives. Then he took a long look at me.
You really do have red boxers with white petals, don't you?
He asked. I got a pair, yeah. He nodded, taking another sip of his steaming hot coffee. He looked out the window with a sigh.
My boy is doing better,
He said.
Turns out he's got an eye condition, gave him migraines.
So he's doing better?
Night and day.
Jake smiled.
It's nothing short of a miracle.
There was a pregnant pause as we just nodded at one another, drinking our coffee. Finally, I bit the bullet. Jake, I'm gonna need the number to Stranger Tom. Jake tried to help as best as he could, but it turns out it wasn't quite that simple. He'd met Tom through a friend of a friend of a friend. Backtracking wasn't as easy as it seemed. Jake gave me the number to a guy who worked at the casino we'd been to. That guy, in turn, directed me to a nightclub manager up in Halethorne. It took me 2 days of emailing, texting, messaging, and unwanted calls to finally get to a clear lead. A dancer over in Ferndale told me she could set up a meeting with him for a price. It cost me all my blackjack winnings, but I finally had a time and address. Some guy who'd won the lottery had rented out a strip joint. Guess who their host was? It was a Friday night when I drove out there. The place was rented out and closed to the public. I slipped the bouncer a $100 bill, name-dropped the dancer I'd talked to, and promised I wouldn't cause any trouble. That did the trick. The party was going strong. Explosive music, dim red lights, smoke, champagne and sweat. Clinking bottles accompanied by cheers and groans. Not too different from a certain bachelor party. I could almost feel the champagne bubbles tickle my nose. And there at the bar sat none other than Stranger Tom. Walking up to him, I felt my heart sink into my stomach. This might be one big Hail Mary, or I could be the dumbest man on the entire East Coast. Tom turned in his seat, sliding a shot of whiskey my way. He didn't even look up.
I knew you'd be back,
He said, throwing me a side eye.
You have questions?
Just one.
It'll have to wait.
He smiled.
I got business.
He turned to face the partygoers. He raised a glass to them, getting a handful of cheers in return. Tom spoke under his breath, never dropping that unnerving smile.
Fucking clown monkeys.
As he turned, those piercing eyes dug deep into me. They seemed different now, stronger, angrier. I could have sworn they moved like fire.
I don't usually let people ask me twice,
He said.
Then again, most don't want to.
It's important, I said, and I'll pay the price.
Oh, I'm well aware. You come chasing me down, you gotta be hella desperate. Drink your whiskey.
I'm good.
I wasn't asking.
My heart skipped a beat. I chugged it, letting the liquid fire sink into my throat. My fingers tingled, and I could imagine the ache of my index finger. Just that tinge of pain with promises of more to come. Stranger Tom turned to face the bartender, ordering himself another shot of whiskey. Who are you? I asked. How do you do what you do?
I'm no one,
Tom said.
Who cares?
So you won't tell me? He held up his glass, letting the liquid reflect off of the colored lights. Suddenly, his silver lighter was on the table. I never saw him reach for it. It just sort of appeared.
I come from a land of a watchful red sun, where the snow is feathers and the shores are silver black, where all the flowers have choked to death, turning a sickly blue.
He tapped his lighter.
Like my fire.
While Tom slipped from table to table, refilling glasses and lighting cigarettes, I stayed at the bar. After a while, it all looked the same. Men, women dancing, sitting. It was all just meat, sweat, and fabric. Wedding rings reflecting the burst from a strobe light. Memorial tattoos grinding against exposed chests. My phone buzzed, and I knew it was Salmon. I couldn't bring myself to read it. Long past midnight, I'd fallen asleep at the bar. I woke up as one of the girls wished the bartender a good night. Looking up, I saw Tom waving me over. Most of the place had cleared out, just a handful of guys left. Tom had the seat of honor at the edge of the table. There were traces of questionable powders right next to puddles of spilled mojitos.
You think there was ever life on Mars?
Someone asked.
That's fucked up, right? Like, if there was.
Yeah.
Another agreed.
Like, all the way over there. What is that even like? What does it mean? For us?
Stranger Tom gave me a knowing look.
Sounds like you gentlemen are a curious lot, he smiled. Now, let me present a hypothetical.
He gave them the same speech as we'd gotten. Made it sound fun, kind of like a drinking game. Our biggest, deepest questions, all for a spooky little price. A deal with the strip club devil. One guy just asked for the name of whoever stole his pickup. Another tried to be a smartass, asking for the article number of a replacement drip pan for his fridge. They took turns asking these inane, childish nonsense questions. And I just sat there, sweating. Then there's this one guy, this one drunk asshole that chimes in.
I want to know what God looks like.
He grins.
Wouldn't you guys like to know?
That's a big question.
Nodded Stranger Tom.
One of the biggest.
Yeah, well, I want to know.
The guy repeated.
Don't you guys want to know?
They did. They all did. I tried to chime in. A word here and there, asking them to reconsider or go back to their earlier questions. Hell, I even tried to suggest calling it a night. But it was too late, and Tom had already brought out his lighter. His eyes were brighter now, hungrier. He was thriving. I wanted to do something more, something drastic. If asking what a marriage looks like 20 years into the future rips your entire leg open, what does asking for the face of God cost? I made a plan in my head. I was going to head for the bathroom, maybe pull the fire alarm, or maybe get everyone a round of drinks, stalling for time. But when I saw Stranger Tom's grinning face looking down on me, I knew it was too late.
Don't you want to ask a question too?
He asked. I swallowed my pride, feeling the salt stick to the side of my throat. It burned worse than the whiskey. I nodded. I want to know how to save my wife. I got a few strange looks from around the table, but Tom just smiled.
That's a big ask.
He grinned.
A real big ask.
Can you say help?
Oh, I can.
He nodded.
And I'm sure Sammy will be just fine.
Looking back at it, I was just too nervous to notice, but I never told him her name. He flicked open his lighter and lit the blue flame. It felt like the bulbs in the room started to dim, like the music faded away. The static buzzing in the overhead speakers grew louder.
Then look deep into the flame, gentlemen. Look deep and answer me this.
His eyes flickered. The flame didn't.
Do you submit?
And they did. I closed my eyes and held my breath, waiting for the pain to come. Seconds passed. Then, a whisper.
I love this part.
The man across from me unfurled. That's the best word for it. Unfurled. From his fingertips and up, the very bones of his body started to come undone, like they were escaping his flesh, turning themselves into needles, puncturing him from the inside out. As his skull fractured, twisting his musculature into a parody of a human smile, he started barking nonsensical words. Something from a dead language, long since unheard, all with perfect clarity and pronunciation. As his bones broke apart, smattering like a box of firecrackers, whatever he saw was enough to drive him to an eldritch madness in that last moment. To view the face of a god.
Ew!
He smiled.
Yo!
Blood and tears streamed down his face. His neck broke in a snap, along with his spine and hip, twisting his body into an impossible shape. The others panicked. One guy fell backwards, out of his chair, as his body split open on the floor. Another headed for the emergency exit, but didn't even get halfway before his legs burst like popcorn.
Yo!
They screamed with the last of their wit. One of them crinkled in on himself like crushing a sheet of paper. One had his ribcage split open, folding him inside out like an empty pocket. Ew! It wasn't a yelp of pain, it was ecstasy. Stranger Tom stood up, soaking it all in. Without turning his eyes from the chanting mounds of broken men, he spoke out loud.
Yours will be worse.
He said,
They wanted to see something. You want to save a human life. You know what that's worth.
He towered over me, his eyes literally crackling with a blue flame.
To preserve observe the infinite potential of a life, the immortal form created in the image of those who begun?
He laughed. He laughed like it was the best joke he'd ever heard. He laughed until there were tears streaming down his cheeks.
You're going to suffer so many times over.
He held up his lighter and put his finger on the lid.
Thank you.
He smiled. Click. Images rushed past him. A beach of silvery black. White feathers falling from a clear sky. An endless, waveless ocean. And above a bloodful, lidless eye, ever peering into the cracks of our being. Bending the world, growing larger in my mind, sucking into a thoughtless everything.
Yo.
Yeah. And at the end of a breath, the answer was clear to me. I'd had the cure all along. A few weeks down the line, Sammy was going to make a miraculous recovery. After 100 steps backwards, she was finally taking a step forward. It was bound to happen. It was always going to happen. Her hair and smile would grow back, and by spring she'd be sitting next to me feeding ducks at the pond. And now I was going to die for nothing. I came to being held aloft by Stranger Tom. He panted like a hungry dog, his eyes fully blackened, with blue embers flickering impossibly deep in his skull. His teeth had grown sharp and predatory, revealing a white maggot-like tongue. He snickered with anticipation, staring into me. No, I stammered. No, it's not. The last chance of EO had died, reduced to a single wheezing cough from the final man with something that could resemble a face. Stranger Tom's smile faded. He turned his head to one side, frowning. You're not saving her, are you?
No, she's going to make it. On her own.
God fucking damn it! He grasped my neck with one hand and threw me to the floor. I tried to fight him off, but it was like pushing on an oak.
I was looking forward to that one. I'm aching for it.
He groaned.
And I get nothing.
Just let...
No.
He spat.
I'm not getting much, but I'm gonna savor this.
He let me go and stepped back. 100 thoughts rushed through my head. Pleading, cursing, crying, screaming. It all just turned into this whining noise, meaning nothing and everything at once. Tom bore down on me, furious.
Give me what you fucking owe.
Then a crack, and darkness. People tell me the place went up in flames. I think he set the fire, possibly to cover the tracks. It was easy enough to blame the partygoers. They didn't particularly care for fire safety. I remember swirling smoke moving overhead as someone dragged me by the legs. And in that moment, that infinite second between life and death, I could see it. That big red eye in the sky, peering down at us, infinitely far away and enveloping us at the same time. Ew. Ew, ew. For those who ask, I was just going to a party I'd been invited to. That's the official story. There was a fire and a beam fell, gave me a minor spinal fracture, and knocked me out cold. Few know that the fracture came long before the fire. The most magical irony of this whole story was just a few months ago. I was in bed waiting for the pain meds to kick in, and Sammy was waiting for me by the door.
Can't sleep all day.
She smiled.
We got ducks to feed.
I wanted to share this in the faint hope that it prevents a tragedy to someone, somewhere. He's still out there, lurking at the edge of parties, listening in on drunken songs, waiting for his time to strike. When that lapse of judgment is just right, it really makes sense for the most basic of advice to help us, even now, to never ever talk to strangers.